Hey guys, it's Emily, the Controversial Mom, back for yet another controversial topic. I want to talk today about what I call the anti-women's rights movement. And I know that sounds like super weird because, well, it's not really a thing. There's the women's rights movement, not an anti-women's rights movement. However, I feel like that is where we are as a society these days. So over the past several years, we've seen this major influx in this crazy transgender thing where we're supposed to accept that men can become women, women can become men, you can be both, you can be neither, you can be a cat. Obviously, all of this is ridiculous and completely untrue. But I want to focus on the trans, air quotes, transgender women situation. So throughout history, women have gone down for significant things that they did just because they were women. So I want to talk about a couple of people throughout history that really and truly we know, not because of what they did, but because they were the first woman to do what they did. And of course, this is the women's rights movement. So we've all heard about the women's rights movement. I obviously heard about it when I was in college or in school. I've forgotten most of it for two reasons. I really cared more about the social aspects of school. But also, like, that was forever ago, so I didn't retain all that information. So I started digging into the women's rights movement because I did really want to understand what it was, who was involved, why it mattered, all the things, to understand why what we're going up against now with this anti-women's rights movement is such an important topic. So I made a list of really important names throughout history. Now, some of these people, you're going to cringe when you hear their names because I know I certainly did. And I didn't want to include them, but I did include them because of the significance that they had as women in history. And they will forever be remembered in history because they were a woman that accomplished an amazing feat. So the first one, or the first two really, Abigail Adams and Susan B. Anthony. I really still don't have a full grasp on all the amazing things that these women did, but I've heard their names throughout my life. Abigail Adams was married to John Adams, and she was very instrumental when he was doing all the things with the founding of the country and the documents and this, that, and the other. She was really influential in telling him not to forget the ladies. Her whole thing was women need to be influencing government just as much as men, because if you've got all men making decisions, then you're going to be very biased and very narrow-minded. So she fought from the very beginning to include women in the establishment of our country because women need to have a voice. And then, of course, we've all heard of Susan B. Anthony. Both of these women were very instrumental in laying the groundwork for what eventually became the right for women to vote. So we've heard their names. They're really important. They went down in history because they were women fighting. And now we know their names on a daily basis, or we hear them on a regular basis. All right, the other one I'm going to tell you is very cringy. This person was horrible, but you'll know her name because she was a woman that went down in history. Margaret Sanger. So Margaret Sanger went down in history for what we now call Planned Parenthood. It actually started out as First Birth Control Center. But nonetheless, we all know Margaret Sanger for her role in, air quotes, women's reproductive rights. Now, abortion is sick, it's twisted. I am unapologetically against it. But the point is, everybody knows Margaret Sanger's name because of what she did in history as a woman supporting women's rights. So the next one is Amelia Earhart. We've all heard about Amelia Earhart. I still remember reading books when I was little about her. And it was amazing. She did great things, but we know her because she was the first woman to fly across the Atlantic. I can't even tell you to this day who the first man was to ever do that. And I've been researching this stuff for like 2 weeks. I never looked up who the first man was to do this. I just saw Amelia Earhart, knew exactly who she was, and thought, yeah, she went down in history for doing something men have previously done, but she was the first woman, and therefore we know her name. Rosa Parks, that's another great one. We all know Rosa Parks' name because she was a woman who said, no, I am sitting here. I'm not moving to the back of the bus. A woman sat, and she is now in history forever because of the amazing accomplishments that she had. That's huge. But again, because she's a woman. All right, so I'm going to shift a little bit to more modern day ones. These are ones that have happened since I was a kid or since I've been alive. And I've heard these names my whole life. I just never fully grasped the whole thing of like what they did and why they mattered. But Sandra Day O'Connor, I did not realize she was the first woman to serve on the Supreme Court. And that was in the early 80s. I had the dates written down. I've forgotten them by now. But like that's relatively recent in the grand scheme of things. So that's huge. Like in my lifetime, the first woman to ever serve on the Supreme Court was appointed. That's amazing. And then, of course, there's Janet Reno. I remember as a kid there being skits on SNL about Janet Reno. And they were hilarious, but I didn't really know who she was. I just remember her character being on there and them making fun of her. And they were hilarious. Like, I really want to go back and watch them because they were that great. But I didn't realize she was the first AG for the country, Attorney General for the entire country. Like, that's really cool that happened, again, not that long ago. And then really nearer term ones, in the 2000 era, Nancy Pelosi. All right, crazy Nancy, I got it. Like, I can't stand her, but I will give credit to the woman. She's a fighter like nobody else. I did not realize that she was the first female Speaker of the House. Like, I knew she had that role. I knew it was huge that she had it, but I thought it was just because she was really strong in her beliefs and she fought and she got what she wanted. I had no idea that it was because she was the first female Speaker of the House. And that was like in 2007. Really not that long ago. And then, okay, cringe alert, because these next two are horrible and I just want to like poke my eyes out saying them, but it is part of history, so I'm going to acknowledge them. You had a Hillary Clinton become the first female nominee for a major political party in 2016. Glad she lost, by the way. But still a huge accomplishment. I mean, it took us that long to get a female to run for a real political role like that. I mean, she was not a good candidate, but she still got the nominee. That's huge. And then, of course, we have Kamala Harris, unfortunately, the first female VP of the country. Now, Kamala's a really horrible role model, and I really hate as a woman that her name will forever be etched in history for the accomplishment of being the first female VP. But nonetheless, her name will always be remembered for the accomplishment as being the first female VP. So women have come a long way. They've shattered a lot of glass ceilings. So knowing all the things that we've accomplished up until the year 2024, it's really frustrating to look at where we are in society and know that so many people are pushing this insane agenda where men can become women. And here's why it matters. Of all the things that women have done for centuries in our country, again, their names are in history forever because they were women making these accomplishments. Let's think about what we've dealt with in the past couple of years with men pretending to be women, claiming that they are women because they feel like women. How many young girls have lost out on scholarships, breaking records because men are competing in women's sports? And we're not just talking collegiate level, I'm talking high school level too. This is going on all the way from high school to the Olympics. I mean, it was just a couple months ago that we had a man fighting in the women's Olympic boxing ring, claiming to be a female, failed all the tests, didn't have the testosterone level of a woman, but claimed to be a female, got in the ring, fought this woman, real woman, who had been training for decades for that moment in history, and she lasted 40 seconds. Because a man said he was a woman, and he got in the ring to fight as a woman. 40 seconds. That's all she could handle. Had one, maybe two hits, but I think it was just one, and said, it was so intense, I've never been hit that hard in my life. And she got out of the ring. She lost her opportunity because this sick, twisted man decided he wanted to be a woman and then hit women publicly and get applauded for it and win a gold medal for it. It is sick and it is twisted. So as a society, we have lost so much ground in sports by letting men pretend to be women and enter women's sports. And then, of course, that spirals into the locker room. Of course, if you're playing sports, you're in the locker room and you're changing, and now we've got men in there. Again, let's go back to Riley Gaines and all the things that she's talked about. Riley Gaines is a household name because she said the unthinkable thing of men do not belong in women's locker rooms. Let that sink in for a minute. That's all she said. Common sense, something every one of us would believe. And because it was so controversial, she has a national platform for standing up and saying men do not belong in women's locker rooms. This is asinine that we're even having to entertain the conversations and say these things, yet we are. And it's not just sports locker rooms. Think about what happened at Planet Fitness, right? It wasn't a couple months ago that men were being pushed all over the place for having access to those locker rooms. I mean, it was everywhere on Facebook and Twitter that men were going into the women's locker rooms at Planet Fitness, and Planet Fitness was called out, and they doubled down. They did not back off. They didn't say it was a mistake, nothing. They just kept with the policy and said, yeah, this is what we're doing. And to my knowledge, they're still doing it to this day. So now we've lost ground on women being able to go into a locker room at a gym. That's ridiculous. And then you expand beyond that, and in some states, thankfully not Alabama at the moment, men are allowed in bathrooms with women in public spaces. I mean, it wasn't that many years ago that Target allowed this, and they got massive backlash. Well, now the whole thing's normalized. So you've got men going in women's restrooms in public places all over the country. It wasn't just a couple weeks ago. I saw a Facebook, or maybe it was Twitter, video where a man was in, it was like a Hobby Lobby or something. I don't remember what store it was. But he went in there not to use the bathroom, just to look around. And they videoed the whole thing because, of course, the woman involved was very concerned over the whole situation. But that's the crap we're dealing with. Men just wanting to go in women's bathrooms, and the acceptable thing is to say, well, yeah, they can because they think they're a woman. They identify as a woman. And for anyone that's not been in a women's restroom, let me just break this down for you. Women like privacy. Obviously, we know that. Women have a restroom just like men do. You go into a men's restroom, you got a couple stalls, and then you got a big urinal, and I assume it's a big one. Maybe I have a bunch of little ones. I don't know. I don't go to the men's bathroom. But men are in and out 30 seconds. Like, they go in, they do business, and they're out. Women don't operate that way. We know that. They go to the bathroom, and it takes them 30 minutes. We've all seen the lines when you go to public places. There's a reason other than just, okay, yeah, we're talking, fixing makeup, making sure there's no food in our teeth, all those things. But the other thing is that women truly value privacy. You go into the bathroom, there's nothing but stalls. You don't have a urinal or just toilets sitting out everywhere. You have stalls. So women go to the restroom, they then wait in line to get into a stall. They go into the stall and it locks. That's the levels of privacy that women expect and desire when they're going to the restroom. I remember when I was little, in the school I went to, it was a really small country school, had an older gym. It had maybe 4 stalls. It was not big, but one of the stalls did not have a door on it. There would be a line of women out the bathroom door. They still would not use the stall that did not have a door on it because women want privacy. So when we push back on these issues about men coming into the restroom, that's what we're talking about. We won't pee in front of each other if there's not a door. If there's not a door on the stall. We just don't do that. It's not natural for us. So it's really uncomfortable. It's very invasive if we know a man is beside us in a stall because he doesn't belong there. It's not natural, and it automatically puts women in a position where we feel vulnerable and like we're going to be attacked. I don't care if the person claims all day long that they're not going to attack us. This is a delusional man that has a mental illness pretending to be a woman in the women's bathroom. And most moms take their kids to the bathroom with them. I know I do. So I've got my child with me. I'm in a vulnerable position, and potentially a man in the stall next to me, of course I'm not going to be okay with that. So that's why it's extremely important that more people start speaking out on this topic about why this is an issue, why it is not acceptable, and most importantly, what we have to do to combat this. Now, everybody wants to talk about how, oh, Trump won, Trump's going to fix it, he's going to sign the executive order, everything's done, we don't have to worry about it. That's partly true. Yes, Trump said he's going to sign the executive order and fix all this. That's great, love it, can't wait for it to happen. But here's the other thing. Trump can sign an executive order, and it's only good as long as there is a true, strong conservative in office. So just like with the border, Trump signed an executive order in his first term. When Biden came into office, Biden undid it. There's nothing that stops the next administration from undoing anything that Trump does via executive order. So while that may be an immediate quick solution, it cannot be the standalone solution. So here in Alabama, for 2 years in a row, we've had legislation that would start addressing these issues. There is a bill called the What is a Woman bill. It does one simple thing. It is a definition-only bill that would codify into law male and female. That's all it does, nothing else. But it is foundational in the sense that in future years, legislation can be built upon that. For 2 years in a row, Alabama can't figure out how to pass this legislation. So in 2025, this bill is going to come up again. It will be pre-filed. It's going to come up again. Alabama legislatures must pass this law, this bill, immediately. We can no longer delay this. It has to be done because as soon as we get that done, then we can start passing laws that deal with the privacy of bathrooms. Because if you can define male and female, you can then say male and female have to use the restroom based on their sex assigned at birth. Also a bill that's going to be filed for the 2025 session. So these work in conjunction with each other. They must be passed. Every state needs to be doing this. If they don't already have laws on the books, they've got to start doing that because the executive order can help, but if you don't have state law in the future, you've got nothing. So it is time for Alabama legislators to get that done, to start protecting women in all of these vulnerable places, whether it's a public gym, whether it's a bathroom at a state agency, it doesn't matter. These things have to be addressed. We've got to fix these issues because I shouldn't have to be fearful every time I go to a restroom and take my son with me that I've got to go check all the stalls around me to make sure there's no man in there that's going to attack me and my son. We shouldn't have to do that. We shouldn't feel vulnerable when we go to the bathroom because of somebody that's in the stall next to us. I take my son with me to the restroom because I am trying to ensure his safety. I don't let him go in the men's restroom, even though he's old enough to do it. I don't let him go in there by himself because I don't know who's in there. I take him with me to ensure his safety. And at this point, I don't even know that we're safe because we can let men in the women's bathroom and there's nothing legally that I or a store can do to prevent it. So we've got to fix this issue. We've got to reclaim women's roles in our society so that we can continue to not only protect women, but celebrate true women accomplishments like we have throughout history. So that is my controversial topic for the week, getting men out of women's spaces and reestablishing women's roles in society. So thanks for joining. I hope you learned something. I know I learned a lot by doing this, so hopefully it was helpful to you guys as well. And until then, y'all have a good one.